Well, once you have your videos project started, you might realize that there's some things you want to do to adjust the video, do some color correcting or do some frame adjustments. So we're going to explore what we can do with the Photoshop frames and the Photoshop timeline. Here we go. Well, here's a video in the timeline mode, and when I move the playhead around, I'm noticing that this one video is really shaky, and the truth is that happens a lot when you take a film with a smartphone device, just because it's hard to hold it steady, and you get those devices. And there's actually a trick to make them more smooth, like this one. So we're going to explore that option here. The trick is you're going to create your file and import it to video to frames, frame layers. And when you do that, all those files, all those frames come in, like I have here. And I'm going to show you some files, some slides that are very shaky. You can see that. I've actually done a little bit of the work already. When you bring them in, they become very shaky. But notice what I've done here, how these ones are not so shaky. They're a lot smoother. And the trick is you're going to select the layers, all these layers in here that you would have, and right now I just have a portion of them selected, but you'd select all the layers in the frame, and then on the Move tool up on the options bar, there's an option to align or auto-align layers, and then Photoshop's going to auto-align them. You're going to see the canvas size changes a little bit, and so you will need to crop that image ultimately in order to adjust for the canvas size, but you change that from something like this, where they're auto-aligned, to something like this, where they are not. And that makes a big difference. Once you've done your adjustments, you can take the information and turn it back into a video timeline so that these frames, let's go ahead and click on that, will start playing more like a video. And it might take a moment for it to render, but there we go. And I can see that smooth part, and then there's a jagged part. Let's take another look at frames and what we can do with that in touching up images. Here's an image that has already been using the auto line. That auto line can take a while to do, especially depending on the length of your document or your video clip, how many frames and layers you have, and just the resolution of it. So just be aware of that. But once you have those frames in set, and I've gone here and made the auto line and did some cropping, there's a few other things that we can do to make some updates. So one of the things that we could do is, working with layers here, is I could fix up this area. This it's not really a fix up, but I could kind of clean up the grass and remove this element. And depending on what frame I'm in, I'm going to see different states. And I want to start with the first frame. That's actually the first layer. So I'm going to make a copy of that layer and then drag it up to the top so it's going to replace any of these other options. And I'll actually put it in this group so it's easier for me to work with that. There we go. And with this copy, I'm going to make some changes just using my patch tool here. There's patch. And why don't we use the content aware patch? We might have to do this in a couple of steps, but go ahead and select some grass that I like, move it to some grass that I want to change, kind of maybe get this color here. Until I get something. And we could kind of keep moving around until we got something we liked, but that's starting to look more like grass. I'll go ahead and deselect, compare that with the original, right? Now I'm going to keep this, but I need to block out some of the image. Otherwise, even when I play the timeline, let's go ahead and click and play here. You can't see anything, but it's being covered up by this layer. So what I'm going to do is make a mask and hide part of the image. I'll just go ahead here and create a mask. Now with the white, everything is still visible, but I'm going to get my paintbrush. Here we go. Switch the colors, black, and get a larger brush, just resize it. And why don't I click on a different frame so that we can see what's happening as I start adding in. You can start seeing behind it. I'm going to get some of this lake area because that's really the most of the part that's moving. In fact, I can even put a whole bunch of it and start, right? So you can see the mask in here, how we created it, and it's using it to create that part. And it's also having sort of a solid area of the grass, which is helpful because when we did the auto align was really focusing on the key information. So there could be some misadjustments a little bit earlier. So let's go ahead and click on the first frame here and play it. And you can see how that information is moving. Now I'm noticing with the bushes over here, or the tree rather, that it's actually playing. Let's go ahead and move to the front. Go rewind all the way, and we'll watch the trees up here. And it's a little crooked. It makes the building shake a little bit. So what we could do is actually come back to our mask, and with the mask switch colors to white. And we could perhaps paint in some of that area so that it doesn't move, or we could carefully come in and paint over here where the trees are, so those aren't going to move, and kind of change around, and you could experiment with that. But as you're seeing it, you're going to notice how the buildings stay put more, and the trees here stay put more because of the mask. Now you can also apply adjustment layers, and we're going to go ahead and add, let's start with a adjustment layer just for the vibrance, and you can see what's going on here. And when I apply this adjustment layer, I'm actually going to apply it to all the layers, not clip it, but that would just apply it to one. But I'm going to apply it to all the layers, and so it fixes them. And to really make it more dramatic, I'll show you what happens. That's pretty intense right there. But you can see how all the layers are affected. All the frames are affected. I could actually make it just maybe a little bit more uniform. There we go. And when we play it, and it's a difference. Now with these layer options, keep in mind you could just keep adding layers to this, and we could add a layer, for example, a text logo or a smart object. And here's an example of what's been done with some different objects, a text layer and some different adjustment layers and a mask, and we can go ahead and play that. And once we've done our setup, we could always move it into the timeline. I'm going to come back here to the timeline itself, and I just want to show you a few things you can do in the timeline mode instead of having to start with frames. You might have something that looks like this, and you can actually apply adjustment layers to that item. Now these are sequential. This is all one video group. I can click on this video group here, or this layer in the video group, and I can apply adjustment layer. Maybe I want to do something like curves to intensify the color, make it look a little more interesting. And in this scenario, because it's part of a group, Photoshop automatically applies it as a clipping path. So even if I had applied it to a layer that's higher up in the chain, go ahead and we'll try one for, let's try hue and saturation just so you can see the difference. Notice that it's only applying it to this element, and you can't see it until we move the playhead. There it is. We can hide that. Now you can also add elements such as text on top, and the easiest way to do that is you just click on this video icon right here, and instead of adding media, which is going to add it sequentially, go ahead and choose a new video group, which is going to allow you to add something simultaneously. Here's your new group. And with your new group, you can create layers and different features. For example, you could create text, and you could just change the size to what you want. It's a little big, but there we go. And then I could adjust it and make changes to it as well. I'm going to go ahead and just temporarily hide that group, and there we go, hide the group here. And when I hide it, actually, you'll see that it's no longer visible in the video. The other thing that you can do is you can take advantage of these smart objects. Now we changed this water into a smart object so that we could transform it, and this one too. In order to resize something or transform it, you need to turn it into a smart object. In fact, let me just show you this here. I'm on this second layer. If I try to go into Edit, Transform, oops, Free Transform, let's do that. I'm getting the warning to convert to a smart object. I'm going to choose Cancel here. Now, when you have something as a smart object, you can also take advantage of a few other features. For example, you can apply filters. And there's a lot of filters that you can use that will clean up your images. You might have something that wants to do some blurring effects, or perhaps some options that will make it a little bit more sharp or clear. Or if you want to have some excitement, you could actually apply some artistic effects. Like here's a stained glass window. And because this is a smart object, the filter is applying it just to this clip, or just to this area. So you can see how it's applying that stained glass window, and we can make all kinds of elements. And that filter gallery is handy because it's applied to a smart object. I could even turn it on and off. So what you have are some amazing ways to enhance your video, clean it up, stylize it using both the timeline and frame tools. Now it's time for a pop quiz. What Photoshop tool can straighten up shaky video? A, auto align, B, adjustment layers, C, straighten, D, onion skinning. The answer is A, auto align, when you import your video frames into layers.